Hello everyone and welcome back to the cottage garden. Now we haven't been here together for a while, which I explained in my very first video of this year where I was explaining my plans and things for the garden and for the allotment in 2023. I confess that I had got myself to the point where I was feeling really embarrassed and ashamed of the state of my cottage garden. And the fact that it really wasn't looking that cottagey at all by the end of last year. It was looking an absolute state. More than a bit of a mess, an absolute state, I think. But I came to my senses gradually over the Christmas period and was inspired by a couple of other YouTubers who basically just sort of confessed to feeling in a similar way about their garden or about their allotment, and have kind of pledged this year to just get on with it and show it all, warts and all. And I was really thrilled by the response that I got to that last video, where people were basically reassuring me that they don't expect perfection. Now that has all made me really happy and feeling a lot more confident about coming out here and showing you the garden much more often than I did in 2022. Now it's a gorgeous winter's day today. It's very bright, it's very sunny, it's that really crisp winter sun. It's also pretty cold. It's about 2 degrees Celsius, so just above freezing at the moment. And I thought it would be a great time in mid-January to just come out and show you around and get a few jobs done, see if I can do a little bit of tidying up. Before I do that, I just want to very quickly give you a bit of history about the garden. So the house and the garden are 121 years old this year. And the cottage garden itself, though, is fairly new. We've lived here for about 12 years, and what we inherited when we bought the house was basically a strip of lawn and a concrete path, a big ugly shed just out the back of the kitchen window, of all the places to put it. The shed came down pretty quickly and got turned into a pergola or pergola, depending on how you like to pronounce it. And I've pretty much spent the last 8 to 10 years very gradually pulling up that lawn, because I've got no need for a lawn, and replacing it with a lovely pea shingle path, some borders, and then there's still a really messy bit at the bottom of the garden that is just the pits that I have never really got round to sorting out, and that's one of the things that I want to get done this year. But we're going to be seeing it now in its absolute bare bones in January. It looks rough, bless her. She just looks very messy, very untidy, very bare, but there are some beautiful new shoots just starting to poke their way through the soil. Let's just take a look, shall we? So this is the top end of the garden near the house, and as you can see, it's looking a bit worse for wear. There's lots of tubs and pots and containers that during the spring and summer are full of vegetables, and occasionally some flowers as well. I've got a tiny little poly greenhouse there. I have got a few nice things, some nice pots like the enamelled jug. But generally speaking, everything is looking pretty untidy. There's still some parsley growing. And there's some mint in here that's starting to come up again. And then these pots along the side here, they've still got some parsley left, but everything else that was growing in them has come to an end. There's some garlic in here that I planted in the autumn, that's coming through. There's some narcissus in here, or narcissi. And then in here, I can't believe I left this. This was at the point last year where I kind of pretty much gave up. And I've got this leftover bulbs in this basket that are shooting. They're probably not going to flower, but I'm thinking if I just scrape those up, dig a hole in the ground, then I may well get some flowers one year from them. Probably next year, but it's worth a try. I've then got lots of plastic pots and buckets and things that have just blown everywhere in the wind. I'd also given up to the point where I hadn't even taken care of things like my hose pipe and put it away. I mean, honestly, I just got into a state of despair over it, which is very unlike me. I'm normally pretty good at tidying things away for the winter. This lovely Japanese maple that has got some buds on it, which is fantastic. There's a jasmine growing up the side of this pergola, but it really all just needs cleaning. There's loads of leaves on it, there's moss growing on it. It's just, it wasn't looked after last year the way that it usually is. So I'm going to try not to criticize myself too much in this video, but really there are some sorry states that are simply because, look, there's another cardboard box of leftover bulbs there again. It just needs scooping up and chucking in the ground. Got some pots here. I don't know if there's anything in them. I can't even remember. Now this is promising. There are a few tubs that I've seen like this that had daffodils and tulips in them last year. And I think one of the things that I might do is to try and grab all of those, pull them together and come up with some sort of nice display of pots, so that there's at least one good thing to look at in January and February. These have blown everywhere. These are the local council green waste bags, so I can gather up things like that and do some tidying. And then this is what used to be a big long lawn. There's a lot of brambles, there's some dog rose in that hedge. That was a mistake. I'm going to have to try and get rid of that this year. And then my hedging in general has got far too tall. I need to bring that down to about 5 foot. So that's something that I can do early on this year. And then my rosemary bush is looking a little bit sad. I'd like a new one of those this year so that I can get rid of this old one, which is definitely flagging. It's been there for about 6 or 7 years. And then in this bed, there's some forget-me-nots that are coming up. There's some strawberry plants. There's definitely bulbs. I can see signs of daffodils in there. I think there might have been some crocuses in here last year as well. But definitely there's some daffodils on the way. I direct sowed some hollyhocks in this bed and a few other places in the garden as well. I just pinched the seed from my dad's garden and scattered it, and I can see that there's at least 4 in this bed that have germinated, and they should flower this year because this will be their 2nd year. There's some fennel growing in here as well. That's what this plant here is, so I need to cut away last year's growth and then we'll have a fresh fennel plant. I can see that there's some nigella coming up as well, so we'll have some nice sort of early spring flowers from that. I think that's it in here. Oh no, I think there's some oregano as well. But yeah, so there's a little mixture of things in here. They will look really pretty come springtime. And then over on this side, we've got some of my biggest mistakes, really. I have this eucalyptus tree that I didn't realise would turn into such a thug. And I really need to, I'm going to cut it back and then possibly get rid of it. And then also these fir trees or shrubs that I put in, and they were only about that big. And it was one of those things, they were gifted to me. I just popped them in. They're so close together. They're not where I want them to be. In fact, I don't want them at all. So they might have to come out. There's a buddleia and a autumn flowering clematis kind of at the back there, which will look lovely when they start to come out. And then just down the side here in this bed, I can see lots of forget-me-nots again. That's what all of this green here is. There's a cyclamen, and I can see daffodil bulbs coming up. There's a rose bush, there's some ornamental grasses, all sorts of bits and pieces in here. Berberis, that has a beautiful colour on it most of the year. And then this pheasant berry I'm thinking of taking out as well. It's got a bit too big for my liking, so that might be coming out. Just this beautiful rambling rose that I have, and an apple tree that has suffered from woolly aphid over the years, and I've never really done anything about it. And I need to make a decision about whether to try and save this tree, or it might be a bit too far gone, whether to actually remove it. I'm tempted to remove it because it's in such a state, and I don't eat the apples from it. I'm not a big apple eater. I make one apple crumble and then I'm done. There's a random bamboo there, which doesn't really get much bigger because I buried it in its pot to try and keep control of it. There are some really unpleasant stinking daylilies down the side here that I also don't like. The more I'm talking to you, the more I realise there's a lot of things that are going to be very heavily pruned back this year or removed. This grass needs to come out. I don't like it. It self-seeds everywhere. Again, it's big, it's a thug. It doesn't really fit in with what I want my beds to look like in here. Now this bed here has got some great stuff in it. There's some sage in here. There's an oxalis, there's feverfew, there's some marjoram, there's lots of forget-me-nots and bulbs and things that are coming up. I can also see some more of those hollyhocks that should be flowering this year. So there's a lot of promise in this area, but it ends up with a lot of this self-seeded grass in it that needs to just be taken out and kind of better controlled. So if we just look up the garden, this is what it looks like. It's a long, skinny garden of a very sort of typical English industrial terraced terraced building house. There we are. That's the word I was looking for. But you can see that instead of it just being a lawn, it's these two main beds and then the path that winds its way down. This all needs raking over. There's a lot of leaves on there that are just kind of turning to a mulch now, and it could do with a top dressing of some fresh shingle on there as well. Now if we look down the side here, you can see I've got a problem with ivy growing up, and I keep fighting it on my side, but I don't think my neighbour is fighting it on their side, so it just keeps coming back no matter what I do. There's a real problem with brambles as well. They are terrible. I got a little bit more on top of it last year than in previous years, but you know, it's still not great. Let's come and have a look down here so you can see this section. So I was attempting to turn this kind of section here into a kitchen garden section. But what I realised was it does get some sun. It probably gets about 4 to 5 hours of afternoon sun. But a lot of the rest of the time, so most of the morning, it's quite shady. And you can see that now. You can see the shade that's coming from the neighbour's tree. And there's only a bit of it that's overhanging. So there's not much of it that I can cut away myself. So I'm going to have a little bit of a rethink, and what I might do is this section here that needs sorting out, that's a lot lighter and brighter, is I might turn that into more of a kitchen garden bed and grow some veg and things over there, and maybe turn this section into something else, or deliberately pick vegetables that aren't fruiting, the ones that can take being in semi-shade. So a lot of the leafy vegetables, things like spinaches, the beetroot that I've grown in here, I mean that did okay, and things like that. Now this path needs to be finished off properly, so we've got some more pea shingle down, and then this whole left hand side here is just a mess. These are the sorts of areas that I was getting really embarrassed about, and I shouldn't, because I'm not the only person in the world who has sections of garden that look like this. Anyway, let me show you the absolute worst bit. Oh, there's some pots. These are the pots I was talking about, where I think we've got some bulbs from last year in them, so I might gather those together in a moment and move them up near the house so that I've got a nice display somewhere. But then just look at this, if you can see it. There's a lot of very bright sunlight. I mean, look at, I mean, can you believe the state of it? The sheer state of this. There's a bit of a compost bin down the bottom there. There's a Keter storage unit. There's another little compost bin that side. And then there's just junk. There's just absolute junk. Now, what I'm thinking, so what I am thinking is that in this section here, kind of it goes back quite a long way, this section here, is I could pop a little shed with a bit of space in front of it for me to kind of just have a chair, somewhere to sit, some pots and things, and actually look up at the garden, because there's two really lovely views in this garden. Because it's a long skinny garden, you can sit up at the top in the pergola and kind of look down the garden, and you can watch the birds feeding and look at all the, you know, lovely plants from that angle, and you're sort of looking in a downwards way. And then the other great view is the one that you've seen a bit of in this video so far, if I just turn around, is if I sat here in front of a little shed, then I can look up the garden. Oh, this is the other thing here. This is the end of a washing line, of a really old concreted, cemented in washing line that I thought I could grow maybe a couple of evergreen clematis up, because I really want to disguise it, because it does spoil the view otherwise. But yes, so I'm thinking that this sort of path here that curves down, I might straighten that up and have it run just straight down the side here to the back gate. All of this dead wood can either be burnt. I've got a chipper and a shredder in that storage unit that I can use. And then, I'm sorry, the light is really not good at the moment. Really not good. And then go through all of this junk and just sort it into a pile of what's worth keeping, what's useful, and what needs to be gotten rid of. At my allotment, they have got a space for like unwanted metal and then unwanted wood. There's like two piles and they get it taken away. And I'm sure as long as I don't, you know, take the mickey, if I took a few bits up there, that could help me clear some of this stuff out. But there's quite a big space here, so I'm thinking this section here could be where I have pots and maybe a little table and chairs or a seat of some sort, so I can look up. And then there's enough room sort of down here to put, I'm just thinking of like the smallest shed size really, like a 6x4 with the door facing up into the garden. So yeah, but I mean, look at all this stuff that needs clearing. Oh, shocking. It is so shocking. But do you know what? It's probably been an incredible haven for wildlife. We get so many birds and bees in the garden. Well, not so many birds actually, since the neighbours got cats, but we do get some, and we definitely get lots and lots of bees. This, I mean, look, there's so much space at the bottom here. So much space, but none of it's being used. It all just needs a massive tidy, clipping back, so I can really see what's down here actually. But yeah, so this is the junky part at the bottom of the garden. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there hope for this garden this year? I'm feeling really excited, and I'm feeling a lot less self-conscious and embarrassed about the state of it. I've got lots and lots of jobs that I want to get on with, and I want to really just start the year off positively and strong in the cottage garden. What I'm going to do next then is I'm going to pop the camera down for a minute, and I'm going to grab all of these pots that I can see some bulbs shooting up in, and I'm going to carry them up to the top part of the garden, have a little bit of a tidy up there, and yeah, just put these pots in place so that at least when I look out of my kitchen window, what I am going to get to see is hopefully a beautiful bulb display. So here's what I've managed to do. I've brought 6 pots which are full of spring bulbs up to the front, and I've just arranged them on some chairs and tables and things. I will show you in a moment. There's one more pot down there, but it's a really heavy one, and because everything's so waterlogged and frozen at the moment, it's too heavy for me to bring up on my own, and I don't have anyone to hand right this minute to help me bring it up, but hopefully I will do that in the next week or so once it's dried out a bit and isn't frozen. And yeah, I've popped a few pots and some sort of stray things away, piled them up down the bottom, and you know, that will have to do for now. Let me show you the pots and what I think is coming up in them. So what I've done is I've just popped them onto the tables and chairs and things that are out here, and I'm pretty sure that this one has got a mixture of daffodils in it. This one has tulips. It'll be really interesting to see what comes up, because tulips are notorious for coming up differently every single year. And this one is looking to me like it's daffodils. I can't quite see, this has been nibbled at. I think possibly tulips in this one, because the leaves are folded round, and definitely daffodils, definitely a cup of tea. Not sure about these, probably daffodils I think. There's something different in this one and I can't remember exactly what it is, so we'll have to see when they come up. And then this tub here has got some tulips in it, and something here that I remember flowers quite early on, and I can't for the life of me think of the name of it. I've probably still got the packet, so I will have a look at that and see if I can pop that on screen for you. But yes, this is my first foray back out into the cottage garden, and it's been really lovely to be out here. Really lovely to just give myself one little job to do and get it finished. So the jobs that I think will be happening in the next video are a massive tidy up near the house. One of the things that I tend to do every year that works quite well is I sort of start at the house end of the garden and then work my way down. Every year, to be fair, I have got a little bit further down the garden each time, and that's why it really is just that end bit that has got no sort of shape to it or organisation or anything, because I've never really quite got down there to do it. But perhaps that will be different this year. So yes, so priority number 1 will be tidying up the patio end of the garden, and then possibly in the same video, if there's time, will be just pruning some stuff back in the borders and getting the beds prepared for springtime. So that could involve a bit of extra compost on them. Lots and lots of leaves fall down from all the trees and the hedging and things that I've got anyway, so they do tend to get like a leaf mulch on them, which has worked really well, but sometimes I pop a little bit extra on there. So yes, if you are interested in videos about all kinds of gardening, cottage gardening, container gardening, allotment gardening, if you're also interested in cooking and things like that, batch cooking, that's something that I'm desperately wanting to introduce to the channel as well, so that we have like a homestead kitchen playlist as well. If you're interested in those things, then please subscribe. Have a little look at the back catalogue and you can see, you know, some good things and some things that I've made a bit of a hash of over the last 12 months. Catch yourselves up, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you again in the next video.